Hello, and thanks for joining us on Encore. Coming up on today's show. When the Syrian uprising first began 6 years ago, Damascus-born clarinetist and composer Kinan Azmeh couldn't score a single note. Now on his most recent album, Songs for Days to Come, Kinan's not only found his voice, but is giving resonance to the sounds of Syrian poets in exile. He won a Grammy as part of Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble and tours the world with his Arabic jazz ensemble, Hewar. Kinan joins us in the studio. Kinan, thank you for being here with us and welcome to Paris.
Thank you.
Congratulations on your Grammy win earlier this year. You took home Best World Album for Sing Me Home as part of cellist Yo-Yo Ma's Silk Road Ensemble. It was recorded alongside a documentary called The Music of Strangers. Now, what does the Silk Road represent?
There's always the personal and the more general. I feel part of a family, actually, of musicians. Thinkers, educators, instrumentalists, composers, improvisers, and so on. But in a larger sense, it's a family of musicians that continues to expand. Musicians and people who think of music beyond borders, beyond the restrictions, if you want. And I've been lucky to be part of the ensemble for the last 4 years. And also lucky to be part of the film, The Music of Strangers, that was done by Academy Award winner Morgan Neville, who did 20 Feet from Stardom. That won an Oscar, actually, I think 2 or 3 years ago. And the film and the album came out around the same time, and it's been exciting times.
You're not just playing on the album, but you're also composing. You composed Wedding. It features on the record. You composed it earlier on. It has a special dedication. Could you share that with us?
Yeah, certainly. You know, some pieces you write earlier on, and they take different meanings when the context changes. I wrote the piece back in 2007. Initially for Hewar Ensemble, and then now, every time I play the piece, I think of all the people, and I dedicate the piece to all the Syrians who managed to fall in love in the last 6 years. You know, I find it quite inspiring that in spite of all the bullets or the barrel bombs and all the atrocities that are committed on a daily basis back home, people have the resilience and the strength in them to simply fall in love.
And you yourself fall under that banner because you got married.
I did.
September.
That's right. You know, I mean, I wrote the piece not having that in mind. That's an afterthought. But I relate to that. I think, you know, when you hold on to what's meaningful, this is the best way of surviving, really. And and I hope that it's contagious.
So love can conquer all, as can music. Let's have a listen to Wedding. Now, you've been living between Syria and the US for around 16 years now.
Right.
You graduated from the conservatory in Damascus to the Juilliard School in New York. How do the schools and the schools of thought differ?
You know, I think what's different, I mean, at the core of it, it's the same thing. You know, you go and you want to learn how to become a better person, but also a better musician. I think the main difference when I was doing my undergrad back home, you know, I was part of a natural evolution of things. You know, you finish your high school, you go to university. But when I went to New York, I think I was at an age where I knew exactly what I wanted to get out of it. You know, I knew exactly what I wanted to learn. So I was able to dig vertically a bit more. I think the main difference, I have the feeling, I might be wrong about this, but there's more urgency in art making in Syria. Even though back then, more than I find elsewhere. You know, it's about the urgency, about why you need to do this. And it's, you hold on to your voice maybe a bit more in a country where it doesn't allow you to speak up all the time, you know?
Now, speaking of your voice, you were in Syria when the uprising first began in 2011. It shocked you into silence. You didn't write anything for a whole year. Where did your voice go? And what willed it to return?
You know, there are several ways of looking what art can make and the role of art. You know, one school of thought is you do art to reflect on the world around you, you know, kind of documenting the times. Another one is about recreating the world in the most ideal way, according to the artist. The third one, which my personal philosophy is that you do art to experience emotions that you don't have the luxury of experiencing in real life. And when the Syrian uprising began, I felt emotion that I never, you know, experienced before. So the need for art, for me, disappeared for a little bit. But then, you know, you remember that the uprising started because people wanted to express an opinion. And for me, I have this little tool of wood and metal that is my voice, and I have to hold on to that. So after a year, I realized I have to hold on to my tools, also believing that making music is an act of freedom by default. So I wanted to practice that as much as I can.
You channeled your emotions into songs that you composed like wounds. Have a listen. Now, Kinan, you've given a voice to Syrian exile poets on your latest album, Songs for Days to Come, Volume 1. But many other artists are being repressed in Syria, targeted by both the regime and the opposition over their views, some jailed and tortured. Does that give you more drive to create?
It does. Of course it does. Again, you know, I'm somebody who continues to question what I can do. And collaborating with artists has always been at the heart of what I do anyway. I realize the limitation of what I do, you know. I know that this will not free a political prisoner. It's not going to stop somebody from being imprisoned or anything. But it can bring some hope or some inspiration. I mean, by playing music, I feel I'm being proactive. And I'm hoping that it's contagious, that other people actually will step up to being proactive. And in this project, I wanted to collaborate with friends who are poets. It's a collaboration project by far, and I wanted to bring these poems that many of them were written after they left Syria in the last 5 years, and how they relate to big topics like such as God, home, the country, everything. And I think if one has to find something positive in the last 6 years, which is very difficult to find within all the tragedy, is that people are willing to discuss real topics. And for me, that was an inspiration to find these poems. So I wrote music for 5 songs, that's volume 1, by 5 Syrian poets who are all living outside Syria now.
Now, outside of Syria, it's also been difficult to really say what you want to say and find that voice that you've been talking about, because even in the US you've mentioned that your voice has been stifled, that when you speak Arabic you actually have to speak it softly sometimes for fear of discrimination. What's been your experience there?
You know, I moved to New York about a week before 9/11 happened, and this is the time where you become careful. I was never afraid, but always careful. And but now, I mean, you know, if it's a battle we have to face, I'm always ready for it. You know, now I speak loudly about my beliefs, but also about, you know, in Arabic and other languages. And I feel I have room to maneuver. Having a clarinet in hand certainly helps all the time.
Now, speaking of maneuverability, you found that your movements were somewhat blocked when you were traveling to Beirut for a concert, and then Donald Trump's travel ban was pushed into order, and then you found yourself essentially blocked both ways. You weren't sure if you could return back to the US, and you couldn't go back home to Syria. How did that feel?
You know, it's a very tiny story in relation to what people went through. I mean, when you think of the Syrian context, with 500,000 people killed, almost half of the country's population has been displaced, whether internally displaced or refugees in other countries. For me, not being able to go back to an apartment, it's nothing in relation to people who lost everything. But it makes you wonder, you know, what was for me pleasant to see, that, you know, after this travel ban was issued, immediately people went to JFK to demonstrate. And you see this kind of discontinuity between people who demonstrated at JFK and border control who are trying to enforce other sets of values. And again, maybe it's a wake-up call for the Americans to, again, to be proactive.
And you found power and an ability to express yourself through your music. We're going to end the show on your beautiful notes, Kinan. Thank you for sharing your story with us today. And what are you going to play for us?
I'm going to play a little bit from a piece that I've written a few years back called the Scattered Sketchbook. And there are sketches. I was documenting a few thoughts of mine here and there. So I'm going to play a little segment of that.
Well, I'm going to let you get ready with your clarinet. Thanks everyone for watching. Do connect with us on our website and social media. I'm going to leave you in the hands of Kinan Azmeh and his clarinet. Take it away, Kinan.